Hello, and welcome to a special edition of the Congressional Report. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, Station Manager for Manatee Educational Television, and it's our great pleasure to have with us today Congressman Vern Buchanan, our representative from the 16th Congressional District. Congressman, welcome back.
Good to see you, Charles.
And thank you so much for taking time to come and update us on some important issues that are facing this community and the country. But first of all, I've got to welcome you back because you would still be in session if it wasn't for the snow gridlock that's up there now.
Yeah, well, they thought we were going to get 2 feet. Nobody believed that, and we got 30 inches. I was supposed to be up there Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so I'm not, so I get a chance to come visit with you. But I do want to say thanks for what you do for this community in terms of keeping citizens informed. I hear a lot of great positive things on your show.
Well, and it's a great pleasure to have you with us. It's so informative, and you bring such an expertise to some of the issues that are facing citizens in this community. You're always busy. You've always got things to do. Even though you have a snow day, so to speak, from Congress, you're here in your district reaching out to the community around. And today you were recently at the IMG Academy, which is a great business in this community.
IMG is unbelievable. I had a son that went to play football at Stanford, but he ended up with an injury, hamstrings. He pulled his hamstrings in high school, went to high school here locally. And we rehabbed him IMG. So I was over there quite a bit through one summer, maybe 10 years ago. Went back today. It was incredible. They've got 800 employees. Right. They've got 100 openings for new job opportunities, primarily in Manatee County.
That's excellent.
They have, I think the number was $340 million of economic activity for the county in terms of their impact. And they're looking to double that, $800 million in the next 4 or 5 years. So they're a big impact in our community. And the other side of it is I was very impressed with, they're making a big commitment not only to building the best athletes in terms of performance, but they're also doing a lot in terms of building student athletes. And they've got one unbelievable academic school that goes from junior kindergarten to 12th grade.
It's very impressive over
Very
there.
impressive.
And they have the wonderful facilities. They're also very involved in the community and their outreach as well. And I think that's really good. It is a major economic multiplier in this community.
Well, I know that they're doing a lot more, very active on the chamber and a lot of charities in town. Someone mentioned the Boys and Girls Club. So they're giving back a lot. So, but they're going to be, if they're not the largest employer, private employer, they've got to be one of the largest top 5, I think, in the region. And I'm just looking for great things out of them.
And it's really fortunate that you had an opportunity not only to visit and show the presence over there, because they're not only great for the community, it's an international company, and it really gives Manatee County a presence.
Well, they're the largest in what they do in Florida, the country, and in the world.
And
they're here in Manatee County. And that's not an exaggeration. That's a fact. They build world-class athletes, but now they've added the student component in a very big way. So I think it makes a big difference. And the bottom line is they're creating a lot of good paying jobs, not minimum wage jobs. There might be a few of those, but a lot of good paying jobs and bringing a lot of people into our community.
And it was very fortunate for them to have the opportunity for you to visit their campus, meet some of the great people that work over there, and to get a chance to see the wonderful facility. But Congressman, one of the things that I wanted to take a few moments to talk about, recently, you're back down here for a few days. You'll be back in Washington in a few days. What's the atmosphere in D.C. now? Is it still that gridlock that we've heard so much about? Do you see some opportunities there to work across the aisles?
Well, the biggest issue in our area is, of all the issues, it used to be economy and jobs and some of the others, is dysfunction. And so I think I'm hopeful that it gets better, but we got the backdrop of these presidential elections.
Correct.
But I do think, I co-chair the Florida delegation. I try to find a way we can reach across the aisle, not compromise your principles, but there's a lot of things, 80% of things we can work together to make a difference. We got a new speaker in Paul Ryan. I'm very hopeful. And so we are getting some things done, but there's a lot more that needs to get done. And I still think the idea that I tell Democrats and Republicans, we're all Americans. Let's find out how we can make something work that's good for the country. Because at the end of the day, I tell people I'm humbled to be a congressman, but I'm a representative. And I want to represent the people the best we can. And what they're telling me personally is stop the dysfunction, find a way to give and take a little bit, but get something done for the American people.
And I think that's an excellent point. I think over the term of being a congressman, and I must point out that you're in your 10th year as a representative for the 16th District. 5-term congressman, it's a significant achievement, Congressman Buchanan. But during this time, you've really gained some prominence and some significance. And I like now, you're now a senior member of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over tax, trade, Social Security, and Medicare. But you've also been named chairman of a very important Ways and Means subcommittee. And first of all, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what this means for the district and for our community to be on these committees, and what is your mandate as you move forward?
Well, the big thing being on the committee is that you always see it, we're the tax writing committee.
Right.
So our tax code's broken. It's 73,000 pages. There's a lot of loopholes. I'm going to do everything I can to try to eliminate as many of those and bring down everybody's tax rate with the idea of simplifying the tax code. So that's the biggest issue. The other thing our committee does, we provide the funding for transportation. Now, you didn't hear about this probably in the last couple of months, but we passed a highway bill the first time in 5 years on a bipartisan basis.
Very significant.
About $300 billion that's going to make a difference for our roads and bridges in Florida and in our area. And then the other thing, we're the committee, and I'm on the subcommittee for Social Security, but we're the committee that oversees Social Security and Medicare. And I think there's 200 out of the 750,000 I represent. There's 237,000 on Medicare.
Yeah.
So I want to do everything I can to make sure those programs are viable long term in terms of Social Security. I'm not as concerned about that. I think that's in pretty good shape. But Medicare, they're saying 8 to 10 years if we don't make some tweaks or adjustments, not with anybody current or in the near future, but we've got to start looking at it down the road because people are living longer.
Right.
And our health care cost, let's say this year we'll take in $3.2 trillion, but over $1 trillion, 1/3 goes to health care.
That's an amazing statistic. Now, recently, under your initiative and leadership, you brought down to Manatee and Sarasota County the administrator for the Social Security Administration, and it was a very forthright town hall of which you hosted that, and it's significant because this district, the 16th District, is one of the oldest populations. So you want to make sure, under your watch, that seniors continue to their entitlements, to their benefits.
Yeah, so think about this. We have a record amount of tax revenues. I thank all of our citizens. They provide a lot of the dollars that go to the federal government. Over $1 trillion of the 3.2 I mentioned is spent on health care.
That's
The Social Security Administrator, her number to me was, this year, $993 billion. Almost another trillion. So you got $3 trillion, you got $1 trillion health care, $1 trillion Social Security, and then we're not even talking about defense, military, or anything else and other programs. So it's a big component, but I feel pretty strong about where we're at in Social Security long term. Like I said earlier, the Medicare piece, we've got to figure out how to be more efficient in terms of providing Medicare, not compromise anybody's health care, because that's critically important to our folks here locally, but we've got to make sure that it's there for their kids and grandkids long term.
And I think that's a vision that has to be did, because there's immediate needs that'll be ongoing for our citizens now, the people that are retired and continue to live a great life down here in Florida. But there's next generation and the generation after that, of which both Social Security and Medicaid are going to play an important role in. But I'd like to take a moment, if I could, Congressman, to talk about your new chairmanship of the Human Resources Subcommittee. And this is a very important subcommittee that's part of House Ways and Means. First, tell us a little bit about the responsibilities as the chair, and what is the mandate for that subcommittee?
The subcommittee is called Human Resources. It's kind of the safety net for the country. We've been spending about $150 billion a year, the federal government. The average the last 4 or 5 years, this year it's down a little bit. Unemployment compensation is a part of that. When the states don't pay everything, we end up many times picking up the difference. Foster care is underneath that, so everybody that might be at risk. But one of my focuses is going to be in terms of welfare, for example, is how do we make that where we want to help anybody. We're a caring country, but we want to help anybody we can that has some challenges. But the goal isn't to keep them on there for generations. So one of our focuses will be is how do we help them get back to work, welfare to work, and that's really the goal, because I think the best social program you can have is a good paying job. And again, I'm not talking about minimum wage. I'm talking about people being able to get back in the workforce. So that's one of the big areas. The other thing is that I'm going to take the time and effort in Florida and other states, we'll hear people, is just talk about best practices. How can we, whatever dollars we're spending, better apply those dollars? But the idea is to get people more back out, whether it's through education, through training, job training, whatever we can do to invest to get them back where they can get a good paying job, because that's the right thing for them, for their families, for their children, but it's the right things for our communities as well.
And I think that's an excellent point, Congressman. If you give people an opportunity, to either go to school or learn a trade, or some other opportunity that can take them from a welfare situation to a job, to where they're standing on their 2 feet, is beneficial in the long run for that individual, for the community, and for the country at a whole. So continued good luck, and sounds like you have a lot of work cut out for you on that. But I do like the idea of the best practices. So if you have an opportunity to say there's a program in Connecticut or wherever, for example, you can look at that and see how that can be replicated perhaps in other communities.
And the other thing I'll just say, one of the jurisdictions we have is the homelessness. And we have, I know I was just with somebody the other day in the Sarasota area, we have 1,000 that are on our streets. The question is maybe there's 700 that can actually function and get back to work. We're working with different organizations to see if they can work with companies and get these people back in good paying jobs. So that's another issue. But the idea, the economy's booming, Florida's back. I'm very bullish on Manatee, Sarasota County, Florida in general, for the next 4 or 5 years. Everybody that wants a job, we've got to be able to provide that they can get a job. We've got that environment to do that today. Sometimes people need additional assistance. We need to provide that, maybe housing, some other things. But that's my goal, is to make sure that we get as many off welfare and back to work. And
I think that's an important point that you just made, Congressman, is to be able to sustain it too, and what other opportunities are out there. Because Florida, is rebounding from the Great Recession and continues to do quite well. But there's still work to be done. There's still people, out there that need long-term, opportunities for continued success. But one of the things I did want to mention to you, and I'll bring this to you, you've always, over your past history as a congressman, have been involved and deeply committed to veterans. And you're involved with the Veterans Cemetery and Sarasota, the National Cemetery, from the very beginning, and have always been there, for veteran support. And recently, due to your legislative initiatives, you passed the House passed the Veterans ID Card bill, which has been signed into law by the president. First of all, congratulations on this. I hear veterans talking about this a lot, and they're very appreciative of your efforts. Tell us why that was important to you, and what this bill will signify.
Well, I get the best ideas. I do a lot of town halls, Charles, you know, because you cover a lot of them, a lot in Manatee County. But, you know, we have veterans that'll come up to us that have served 4, 6, 10 years, 12 years. They have no identification that they're a veteran. They have a form. Maybe it's 5 or 6 sheets of paper, DD 214,
right?
But it's cumbersome. They've misplaced it, this, that, or whatever. So if you've served less than 20 years, and maybe that's makes up 16 million veterans in our country, they have no way of identifying themselves other than the documentation many times been misplaced. So the idea, a couple of veterans had mentioned to us, why don't we have an ID card?
Right.
It just makes a lot of sense. It shows their service so they can apply, you know, whether it's for a job or an opportunity, or many times there's special discounts and opportunities for veterans.
Right.
So we went to work and met with the VA and got a bill drafted, and then worked the House, worked the Senate, and then we had to go back and forth. There was a few differences, but we finally got it done, and we hope to get it implemented sometime later this year, next year, where every veteran will have the opportunity to have an ID card that they can have with them. And the other thing with veterans, some of them, they just want that sense of pride.
Exactly.
They've served their country in Iraq or Afghanistan or you know, whatever, World War II, and they just like to have a card like a driver's license that they can use.
Signifies their service.
Their service, and they're very proud of their service. And I'm very proud of them.
And again, you know, veterans are very appreciative of this because it's something that is readily identifiable. They can use it to identify themselves when they're applying for benefits or for medical care or whatever the case may be. And it's instead of having multiple forms that they have to carry and take care of, they'll have this card which entitles them to the recognition and the services that they deserve.
But it exactly gets back to your point, how did it come about? Listening. I do these, what I call town halls, but to me, they're listening tours where I go out and hear what people have to say. And I do want to say one other quick thing on the National Cemetery. If a veteran that's watching today hasn't been there, they need to take the opportunity. It's world class. It's the nicest veteran cemetery in the country, bar none in my mind. I mean, they put about $12 million in art and a whole facility out there for the veterans, one of the local foundations. It's just world class. I'm so excited about the veterans. In fact, my dad was in the World War II and moved my mom and dad out there. So we're very excited about the National Cemetery.
And hats off to you. I remember when they did the dedication, Congressman, you were there, and there were several other people from Florida that, you know, pushed hard and worked hard for it. But you were there at the very beginning, you know, as part of that vision to say this is a wonderful area here, that we have a lot of veterans, and and this community deserves a world-class cemetery that we can be proud of, and that's certainly been achieved.
And we ended up getting a couple of tranches, 25 and another $25 million of taxpayers' money to build that. But, you know, I helped lead that effort, but it was a team effort. A lot of veterans, a lot of people in the community. It was very important to them. And it's nice when everybody works together, what can get done for the veterans. And
it's a great legacy for this community, too. I mean, it's a beautiful facility, and I think the people, you know, this area, Manatee and Sarasota County, have thousands, tens of thousands of veterans and their families in this area. And it's a great service to have that cemetery. And again, thanks to your leadership for sustaining that. But as we move away and talking from the Veterans ID card, which is a significant achievement for veterans, you also had another significant thing, too, about the provisions that you did to prevent ID theft, and which is a very important thing. Tell us about that and why you thought this was an important initiative.
Well, accountants here in Manatee County were coming to me, and people were stealing their Social Security numbers and their ID. And many times the employer will send a W-2 in a mailbox. These were being stolen, and they were using the Social Security number to apply to the IRS to get a tax refund, and these were thieves.
Right.
It wasn't the individuals. So, you know, Byron Shin, who you probably know locally, his firm, one of the larger CPA firms in the region, came to me and a lot of others and said, Vern, we've got to do something about it. So our bill, what it does, and it did get passed into law last year, we're very excited about, is that the employers don't have to put the Social Security numbers when they're sending out the W-2. They only put in the last 4 digits, not all 9 or 10 digits. And it's going to make a big difference. It'll affect 100 million taxpayers in the country in terms of ID theft. The other thing is the biggest issue, complaint to the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, is identity theft. In Florida, it's number one. In the
Right.
country, it's number one. This will go to eliminate a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it, and I'm very excited about that.
And again, hats off to you, Congressman, for taking the initiative to do that. Because in some areas of Florida, I believe Tampa had a large-scale operation, and especially in South Florida, there was large-scale operation of identity theft, and people were unaware of this until their bank accounts have been drawn down, charges against their good credit, and it's an industry. So with this kind of preventing ID theft, kind of stems the tide. We hope it would stem the tide of this identity
And they
theft.
really like to go, unfortunately, after seniors. We have a lot
Exactly.
of seniors in Florida. Many times they might have their home paid off. They got a little bit of
Exactly.
money in the bank.
Exactly.
They've got good credit, and they want to find a way to get their Social Security information, because with that they can perpetuate the theft and everything else.
Well, this is a wonderful idea, and it just shows another level of effort that you have, not only for our veterans but for our seniors out there too, to help protect them from this kind of fraudulent activity. And if I could, Congressman, I'd like to switch gears here a little bit. Recently, through a series of tragic circumstances in our country and in abroad, the threat of ISIS has really raised its ugly head once again. It's an important issue. National security is very critical. First of all, tell me your thoughts on this ISIS terrorism and how that ties in with these Syrian refugees.
Well, first off, I feel like the number one responsibility I have, or any member of Congress, House, or the Senate, is keeping people safe. This is a real threat, simply because, in my mind, what's happened, when you look at what's happened in Paris and even in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where they killed 4 or 5 Marines, what happened in Bernardino, California, they're finding ways through the internet
Right.
to radicalize people.
Right.
If you look at Chattanooga, of all places, when you think about Chattanooga, the fact that we had someone that moved in the country, was naturalized, became a citizen, 7th or 8th grade, went to high school, went to college in Chattanooga, and then somehow got radicalized. And then he went out and killed 4 or 5 of our Marines in that area. That's the battle we're going to have going forward. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to think it's going to end the next 3 or 4 years, but this is going to be an ongoing battle. It's even a bigger concern in Europe. I've been in Europe, been in Paris a couple of times looking at this. A lot of them are coming from the Middle East because in the Middle East and Northern Africa, there's a lot of failed states today. Mm-hmm. They're not governable. So these people are drifting, they're being recruited back into Syria. A lot of them are coming through Turkey into Europe, and it's even a bigger issue there, but it's a very concerning issue to the U.S. And then the whole issue people bring up with Muslims, many of them that come out of Syria, for example, and not just picking on them, we can't even do the background check. So how can we bring refugees into our country where the FBI director, and I've been in those meetings, cannot confirm the fact what their background, what they might do or expose Americans to. So I've been very strong against refugees coming to our country, especially from some of those different countries.
Well, let me just pose this to you, if I can. First of all, and I think you're spot on about the radicalization of people here in the United States. And the social media, I think, is something that ISIS is using with remarkable, success. They'll post things, and then all of a sudden they'll get, these malcontents who, through the social media platforms, have access to this ISIS thoughts. And I think that's something that really needs to be concerned is, how are they using the social media sites to get their thoughts out, and how can we prevent that? But more importantly, I'd like to point out, and I understand you've traveled all over the world, you've seen these conditions all over the world. The plight of the Syrians is terrible. It's a country in turmoil. There's tens of thousands of people that are seeking refuge all over. But among those tens of thousands, there are dangerous people. There are people that, have been traced to the Paris bombings and the Paris killings that came through the Syrian refugees. How do we, as a country, as a responsibility, say we have to be responsible to our citizens before we start accepting refugees? But at the same time, we're a humane country. We want to do the best and act in a humanitarian way.
That's a good point, because my grandparents were from Finland and other things. But I think my sense of it is unless we know their background, they can't come into America, number one. Number two is, if we want to be helpful, let's find a way to keep them in their countries and be helpful. I've been to the refugee camps. I've been to Jordan. 100,000 here, 100,000 next door, 100,000. We've got to find a way diplomatically and using international resources along with ourselves to some extent, and find a way where we can keep them in their own countries. Because they're migrating to Europe, they're going to be heading more to America or trying to get into America, and we've got to find a way to keep them on the ground there. And we've got to make some of these, we run all these strong men off in these various countries, and then as bad as they are, then the condition gets even worse.
Right.
And you've got refugees moving all over the place. So it's a big challenge. I don't think that we've addressed it properly in the past, but we've got to find a way to stabilize those countries and have people stay in their own countries and not look to, I'm more concerned about America, but even in Europe, a lot of Europe feel like they're losing their countries and their culture and everything else by the refugees. There's just hundreds of millions or tens of millions coming over the borders.
And that's an excellent point, Congressman, if I may make. And one of the first people I've heard to emphasize that is find stability within the country, so these thousands and tens of thousands of refugees would feel much more comfortable and at peace if they could stay within their borders.
Yeah.
So, and that's a very good point for you to make, is let's find the stability and how we can help these countries, maintain their own citizens. We're going to switch gears again if we can, because I want to talk a minute about the fact you're a very successful man. You started out as a young man and you grew a large business, very successful. You know how to create jobs and what it takes to have a very vibrant economy. Things are better now throughout Florida and throughout the United States. Things are better. There's still work to be done. But what more do you think congressionally has to be done to help the economy?
Our economy is growing at 2%. We're going backwards. I'm talking about nationally. Florida's better, 4 or 5%. That's why the unemployment's coming down. But we should have a mindset, and I think on a bipartisan basis, where we do everything we can to help small businesses. I was chairman of the chamber here locally.
That's right.
We had 2,000 businesses. Most of them are 15 employees or less. What can we do to help them be more successful? And I think by dealing with tax reform, simplifying the code, bringing down the rates in general would be a big part. Reducing burdensome regulations would be a big part of that. Reducing frivolous lawsuits. You see people spending $2 million a month, trying to generate business for their law firms at the expense many times of small business and institutions. So we just need to create a better environment in general to help them be more successful, because most business people I know, if they're making money, they're going to want to continue to grow their business, because they can only make 1% in a CD or something. So if they've got extra money, they're going to look to acquire another business, try to add more employees, grow their business. So we just need to be more focused on startups, entrepreneurship, free enterprise. I did a seminar back about maybe 9 months ago or a year ago, and I had all women in the seminar. And we had a round table, maybe there's 15, 20, but a little seminar. And someone said, "Why are you doing all women?" And these were existing small business, medium-sized business, CEOs of their firm. I said, because I read 57% of all new startups will be women-led. And we need to do everything we can to help startups and entrepreneurship. And let me say, in terms of startups, first time in the history of our country, last year anyway, I don't know what it is this year, there was more businesses that shut down than opened up, and that's not a good thing. So I want to promote startups and entrepreneurship and small business, because at the end of the day, they make up 99% of the businesses in Florida and create the majority of the jobs.
So you're saying that as you move into the session and everything, there's going to be some opportunities for Congress to look for helping small businesses and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I think there's some good ideas on the Democratic side, the Republican side. Let's come together, because I don't think we disagree terribly about that. I mean, they might want more taxes, but at the end of the day, we can find a way to try to help businesses be more successful. We should have a culture up there that helps the small business person. The big guy, they can take care of themselves. The little person that's just starting out from a standpoint of the business, we want to help them.
And I think that's an excellent opportunity. You know, somebody with your business acumen and knowledge, the background, could be in the forefront of helping that entrepreneur, helping that startup, you know, continue to be successful.
Yeah, and I'm always so proud to be an American. I mean, I grew up in a blue-collar family, as you know, and been in business. We've been married 40 years this year, been in business for 30 years, and then I decided to run for Congress. The country's been good to me. I've been blessed, and my thought is I want to go up and try to make a difference and do the right thing. And, you end up involved in a lot of things, but still my main focus is creating good paying jobs for Americans.
And Congressman, one of the key things that you've been, it's been a signature bill for you for many years, is the Constitutional Balanced Budget Amendment. Tell us what the status of that. And I think you're gaining more allies. The longer you're in Congress, you're getting more and more allies on this. Tell us what the status of that is, and what do you see in its future? Well,
we did have a vote on it back about a year or two ago. That's been when I first got to Congress, the first week, the bill that I introduced was a Buchanan Balanced Budget Amendment. Simply says you don't spend more than you take in.
Right.
49 out of 50 governors have to have a balanced budget.
Exactly.
This administration has run deficits averaged $1 trillion for the last 7 years. It's going to bankrupt the country. I'm a blue-collar kid that grew up in Detroit. It's bankrupt.
Right.
They say it can't happen. It can happen. You can't continue to spend more than you take in. I don't trust Democrats or Republicans. If you look over the last 50 years, they balanced the budget 5 times. So that's why I'm saying I want a balanced budget amendment. We've taken in a record amount of revenues this year, $3.2 trillion roughly. Let's give the best value for the money. That's it, period. If we have extra money, send it back. Right. So that's my goal. I'm going to continue to push. I talked about jobs, number one. Really, number one beyond that, super number one, is the thing is that we got to balance the budget. And just as families have to and everybody else, you can't continue to spend money without putting our children and grandchildren at risk. I've got 2 grandkids. I'm here to make it better for my grandkids and my children as well as everybody else's.
Congressman, what about tax reform? You've always been working on tax reform. Will we be able to see a bill in this session in Congress? And what would you like to see it include?
I think tax reform probably won't get it done this year, but I think 17 probably we depend on partly who gets in the White House, because we have a divided government. That'll make a big difference. But the biggest thing, I think, is simplifying the tax code. We have the highest corporate rates in the world. I think we can get that. We're more competitive. We don't have all these inversions and people looking to do business.
Right.
Because it's a global economy somewhere else, so they can lower their taxes. But ideally on individuals, I just like to find a way, eliminate a lot of the loopholes that have been put in place over 30 years, eliminate most of them, if not all of them, and lower the overall taxes so people, when they earn their money, can hold on to more of their own earnings. I think that would stimulate the economy, simplify the code, lower the rates. Right. That's what I'm going to fight for in terms of 2017.
Well, Congressman, unfortunately, I'm running out of time. I've got a couple of quick questions for you. First of all, I'd like to point out, Manatee, Sarasota County, very fortunate to have a congressman, and I would class you, wouldn't even say as a politician. You're a public servant. You're very out there working with your constituencies. You have a great staff that works with you people every day to help their requests that comes across your desk. You're always out in front, whether it's at a community event or something like that, or a town hall. And I think you lead the congressional thing with town halls. I think you have a wonderful record of outreaching to your community. But as you kind of wind down here a little bit, I'd just like to hear your thoughts. We're getting into the political season again. The Republicans have a slew of candidates that are out there, a wide variety of choices that are being made. What are your thoughts as we wind toward the Florida primary that's coming up in a few short weeks? What are your thoughts on the political landscape?
I think that it's wide open, Republican and Democratic side. I know the news is all about Trump every day, but I think it'll be fairly competitive. We'll have to see how that plays out. We've got Iowa and New Hampshire coming up next week or 2 weeks out. So that's going to be a big issue. I think the other thing is that Florida will be a decider.
Yep.
maybe for both of these elections. Because you have, when you look at it nationally, you got New York and California, more Democratic,
Very much so.
Texas, more Republican. This is a purple state in terms it goes either way if you look historically. This will be the deciding state, and I think that time's going to come up around March 15th or so. So Florida will be weighing in a big way. You can't be, I don't think, President of the United States without winning Florida. So I think we've got some good candidates. I like the lively debate. I guess there's one tomorrow night. And then I think the one on the other side was not supposed to be competitive, but it's got very competitive.
Certainly has.
So we'll have to see how this plays out, but may the best man or woman win.
Congressman, I want to thank you again. You know, I know you had a busy day. You probably had IMG and all day today, and then I'm sure you've had other meetings and agendas to fulfill. But we also appreciate you taking the time to come here. This community deeply appreciates, you know, getting insight into those things that are important to them, you know, at their level, at a citizen level. You know, what's happening to my Social Security? How do you feel about this thing? And you being able to update and inform people is a great community service.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, and I just tell all your listeners, I always tell people I'm humbled to be a congressman, but at the end of the day, I'm a representative, and that's why the more they can give me their input and feedback on my website, let me know what they think, I can better represent them in Washington and make America a better place. Thank you.
Congressman, thank you again for joining us. I appreciate it, and we would welcome you back at any time to talk about any matter, you know, that you would like to talk about, you know, as the congressional representative for this district.
And I appreciate the opportunity to visit, and let's continue to do this.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the special edition of the Congressional Update.